Welcome to the final episode for this three-part series, where at the end I think we will know exactly what grace is, what divinity and godhood is, and furthermore, I think all this will tell us everything about souls and Dark Souls too, and even humanity, going hollow, how all of the games tie in together to make Night Rain's lore feasible. Now, before I actually start, I realized that I forgot to cover one thing in my Great Runes video, the Night Lord's rune. Now, I will show the rune on screen here, but if any symbolism is meant to be taken from its shape, it would seem that it has a crescent moon shape that partially covers what looks to be the dark sign from Dark Souls. Now, I do believe this is meant to be taken literally, or in this case, I think the crescent moon shape is what the outer god behind the knight would have brought to the rune. Then, probably the dark sign would have been added as the Souls universe was explored, but the other most important things about it are its general shape, especially these weird little tail-like clippings. See, I mentioned before how runes can be tampered with and altered, and I also stated in a previous video about Halestor that I believe him to be the main protagonist from Elden Ring. A huge piece of evidence I didn't explain properly is this aspect of the Night Lord's rune. It seems to me that all of the shards of the Elden Ring were hammered onto the Night Lord's rune to increase its strength, and or to give the rune the blessings that would be granted by the Elden Ring. I think it's also worth noting that the achievements and even the cover of the game show a very distinct added crescent moon design, as though implying the Night Lord rune, or at least part of it, has been added to the Elden Ring. In short, I think this great rune was forged by our player the moment the knight was called in, whether by accident or intention, and this combined with all of the other factors that happened that night explain why the Night rune is so powerful and why the Night Rain does what it does. We have this Outer Gods rune, plus the entire remnants of the Elden Ring, plus a whole entire Dark Souls themed rune, all of it coalesced. In my mind, it makes perfect sense that this is a world-ending power. But I think it's time we finish the rest of the video series, and I can perhaps cover any other ties to that in a separate video. To start the actual content now, I think the last thing to cover before fully drawing conclusions is grace and runes, what they are and how they behave. Now, runes is the most common currency for your player both in Night Rain and in Elden Ring. It's the battlefield currency you level up with in Limveld, and it's also the only currency that really matters in Elden Ring. These runes function in an identical manner as souls. There is even a kind of equivalent to great runes found in souls. These great souls include the Dark Soul, which started the whole series, and was Slave Knight Gale's main goal to obtain. They are a great cluster of souls bound with power, yes, but specifically held together with one identity behind it. Now, remembrances perform the same function in Elden Ring, but I believe that great runes and remembrances are the same thing, just on entirely different levels. Great runes are crystallized, refined versions of a remembrance that still holds all of the purpose and roots behind it. It has just been fashioned to make something new, rather than something that was already there. It is the refined version of the essence of what a remembrance normally would be. We see that the four initial Great Souls function similarly in Dark Souls 1 too. The first initial souls that are from the First Flame also hold a very specific way of being used. So in essence, each of the currencies that are consumable are just refined, shaped, or altered forms of the already existing basic currencies of their universes. Now moving on to grace, we hear it referred to constantly in Elden Ring. Now immediately to set the stage, I'm going to note the visible similarities to Sites of Grace and Humanities. FromSoft is no stranger to reusing assets, so on its own that means literally nothing. But maybe you can already see where I'm going with this. Grace is what is given to people to make them no longer tarnished. It is the form that the blessings of the gods are given to help people rise above their most basic primal selves. It even goes so far as to call those without grace tarnished, or they are considered flawed and non-human races. Much in the same way that humanity is used. Think about it, one of Dark Souls' core conflicts is about hollowing being the true state of humanity, with humanity being a gift to stave off this inevitable return to who you truly are, except in this case, theirs is a little bit more severe. But if this is a godly blessing, then it would come from the same place as the source of hollowing wood, in this case the first fire. And it does. We know that the hollowing curse is directly linked to the fire fading, and it is only staved off by relinking it. And so yet again, we see nearly identical items from the same universes that are present throughout Night Rain. Only, we don't know for certain that the first fire came from an outer god. We do know that grace comes from an outer god and a god's blessing. But with all these similarities that started to stack up, I asked myself the question that started the whole theory that began everything. What if these different things are actually just the exact same? Not just in a gameplay sense. I already know that they serve the exact same function. That's the entire core behind a Souls-like game, is functions like this. I mean in a literal sense. What if grace and humanity are the exact same thing, just under the effects of a different ruling outer god? See, unlike gods, outer gods change the world around them by merely existing. If a different outer god were to be present in the same area, we would see these currencies shift and change to the new ideals. Theoretically, if an outer god were to come into contact with the Dark Souls or Elden Ring worlds, we would see evidence of runes changing shape and humanity or grace being morphed to match the new outer god. If grace and humanity are just blessings of the outer god given shape to apply to their subjects, then this could also change the way that it applies in Night Rain. And wouldn't you know it, we see these exact occurrences taking place in Night Rain. Now, the last main currency used in Night Rain is Murk. Described as traces of lost grace, it is quite literally grace being infected and changing to match the world as the outer god behind Night Rain sees fit. And this begins to tie in everything. Godhood, great runes, souls, runes, grace, Murk, everything. And even if you look at the Nightfarer's exploration, we sometimes get these invaders. These people blessed by the night itself, that have begun to take its side and fight against us. I think that these people who have this new shadowy shape and greatly enhanced power are obtaining this blessing, this tainted version of what would be grace or humanity to give them strength. And it all seems to come together in a frankly common theme that we see throughout FromSoft in the form of sacrifice. In the case of the Night Invaders, they sacrifice themselves to the cause of the Night Rain, and then they proceed to serve it, seemingly for all eternity, but it's hard to say. After all, we do put an end to the night within Night Rain, so we can't say for certain how long it would have lasted. As for the souls part of it, in Dark Souls 1, not everyone has just one soul, just like how not everyone only has one rune. That's because these aren't souls as in one person no matter what. The way we think of souls in real life is something else. We think of souls as an entire person's essence, the one thing belonging to them and them alone. Whereas these souls are seemingly something else entirely. More of a numeric way of counting how much soul, or in the case of runes, rune essence and strength is found within someone. Runes and souls, if I am correct, are quite literally the tainting of some essence that would grant strength, and in this case, it is being used in the fashion the outer god would like. So when we have been talking about divinity, I think what we are referring to is the most basic and refined and pure version of these currencies. The baseline that everything else builds on top of. The kind of strength that the outer gods specifically would use to fuel their powers. This would be the purpose of the Gate of Divinity. You're not transforming into a divine, you're removing the excess gunk that came from outer gods to leave the already existing divinity behind. You remove the other half of yourself, or even other parts, and leave it open to be filled with its pure essence of strength and creation. In this way, Mikola came closer to being an outer god than he ever was to a regular god. I mentioned earlier how he was a bit of a unique case, and I think this is where we see it. He gave up everything and was prepared to cut out all of the other gods from the realms. Every single one, even the greater will, whose mere presence seems to have shaped the way that the lands between function. It could even have been something that Mikola understood when he first began to make unalloyed gold. To obtain the true essence of power, which we have been calling divinity, you must remove everything else from it. Once you have separated the gods and outer gods from the source of your power, you can finally fight back against them. When looked at in this way, it means that every one of FromSoft games could be connected, or even that they already were connected. They are just simply different realms being governed by different outer gods. They have different rules and different ways of existing because that's how the outer gods are. They are completely alien to each other in their entire being. And it could very well be that godhood across all games means the same thing, to grasp divinity in its pure form and break away from the influence of the other gods and the outer gods that shaped the world you came from. If this is true, it could also give insights into exploring these small, subtle differences between the different areas and what it could mean for their outer gods. But let me know what you think. Like I said previously, there is a couple of flaws to be ironed out. For example, embering yourself in Dark Souls 3, which seems to be the equivalent to humanity, even though your character isn't an undead, so that one's harder to explain. And I'm not a data miner, so I very well could have missed something, even while I was trying my absolute best to do research. I also tried my best to simplify things to fit into a video, which had to be broken up into 3 videos because of how much there was in content, even after simplifying it. And I also really hope I didn't oversimplify to the point that these just seem like insane ramblings and just scratchings at walls like a madman. But thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you in my other videos and theories that I have planned out. Before the video ends, I wanted to say that the True Way to Play series I wanted to make should be coming up in just a few videos. I don't know how in-depth I could explain Elden Ring or how much I even want to. It seems kind of redundant to make a video at this point. I feel like I would just be repeating points that I've already made. But if you would be interested in seeing gameplay of it, let me know. I have a Twitch and I would absolutely love to stream some games here and there. I could start playing Elden Ring and actually get to explain things as I go along. I feel like that would give me the time to actually recognize what connects to what and explain it as I go along, and potentially even edit the videos of streaming and post it here where it could start to make a lot more sense. As I come across items of importance, obviously they would be able to tie into all of the theories I've been talking about, and hopefully make a lot more sense than whatever rambling I've been doing so far. Or if the Skyrim True Way to Play comes out fast enough, then I could even start with a playthrough of that. If you have any thoughts, please let me know. Feedback is always welcome, especially if I missed any details in the video that would counteract the arguments I've made. And if the gameplay is something you'd be interested in, I would also love to know that. Thanks again for watching, guys, and I hope to see you again next time.